Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast with Jim Sechrist. And tonight I have Bill Glover on. He's a member of Petra. They sort of started Petra, but we're going to talk to Bill uh, about Bill and what he's doing and how things got started. Hello, Bill.
Hey, Jim, how are you doing?
Okay, how's it now? Does it sound a little better?
Oh, yes, great. Now I can hear you great.
Okay, that was just the feedback when we
Very
talked
nice.
before. So anyway, Bill, how did you? Let's just start from the beginning. I mean, we know that you are one of the founders of Petra, and Petra is a Christian rock band, and they sing Christian music, but with a rock kind of flair to that. If people don't know who Petra is, but I like Bill as a
And we even won 4 Grammy Awards.
wow, yeah, they won four Grammy awards.
And I'm not sure how many Dove Awards, more than a dozen of them.
Oh yeah.
So over the years, they pile up.
Mm-hmm.
But so we never made much money back in the early days of Petra. We had, there's a funny story back when we started Petra. We were just 4 Christian guys in school and college together there in Fort Wayne, Indiana, at our church.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it was my church. I'd been a member there of my family, and I'd been there playing the drums there for some time. And we opened up a college there, Bible college, and I was one of the students, and Bob was a student, and Greg was a student, and John DeGroff was a student. We all met there, and they approached me and said, "Hey, you're the drummer here. Your drums are out there. You want to jam?" And I said, "Sure." So we jammed, and that's how we started the band. We jammed, and we all gelled. We liked it. And they said, "Well, how would you like to start a Christian band?" I said, "Sure." Because I had already been called into the ministry for some time. I remember at a young age, probably 13 or 14 maybe, being at church camp and going down to the altar and hearing the call to Christian ministry in music. So I knew where I was going and what I was supposed to be doing. And that's, of course, why I was at Bible school, was to get the education that I needed to go on into ministry. I had started playing music professionally at a young age. I got kicked out of high school. I wasn't much of a student, I have to tell you that. As far as conventional high school studies go, I was below par, although not because of my intelligence, but just because of my interest. The only things I really liked were the arts, industrial arts, and music. And so the rest of it suffered pretty good, and I ended up getting kicked out of high school, and I went down immediately to Florida to join up with my uncle, who had a band down there who was needing a drummer.
Mm-hmm. And
so I got my first professional gig in a secular rock band, but it was with my uncle, and kind of I felt, and my mother felt, and my father felt, that it was under his wing, so it was okay. I was 17 years old, and so I went to Chicago and bought my first professional kit, borrowed the money to do it, and piled it in my van, and my dad and I went down to Florida, and my uncle been playing with Tommy Rowe and the Romans, and it was a pretty big band back in the 60s. They had lots of hits back in the 60s, early 60s, like Old Sweet Pea and Sheila and several other ones that you may remember if you're old enough.
Oh, well, yeah.
My memory fades.
Yeah.
But anyway, they had several hits, and my uncle was a lead guitar player, but he quit back in that Tommy Rowe, and his band kept on going. And his drummer, Bertie Higgins, wanted to quit the band, and so he was going out and doing his own single thing, and I said, "Sure, I'll come down." My dad wanted to know if I wanted to go down and play for my uncle, and I said, "Sure." And so I went down and auditioned, and that's what started me off in the music business as far as playing professionally. So that was a year before we started Petra.
I see.
And then I lasted that summer with my uncle, and I went to Nashville from there because I got an offer to go into a Christian band. And so I went to Nashville and played drums for about 6 months out of Nashville, Tennessee, with Gene Cotton, Tim Cotton, Sam Taylor, and oh gosh, what's the other guy's name? I can't remember all the names right off the hand, but it was a great band, a great bunch of guys, and we went off and played a whole bunch of college campuses, and we did that for about a half a year, and then I got drafted, Jim, and I had to go home.
Okay.
So, well, I didn't know I got drafted, but my mom said, "Hey, I got a letter here saying you're drafted." And I said, "Mom, what happened to I should have got a notice to go down and get my physical first, or, to register or something."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "No, it's a draft notice." So I came home, and sure enough, I had a draft notice, and I went down to Indianapolis, but they wouldn't let me go. As God's plan not to have me do that. I wanted to be in the band. I wanted to be involved with music and maybe even ministry, but with the chaplains or whatever I could do. I didn't especially want to carry a gun, but they wouldn't let me serve. They gave me a 4F, and it was for psychological reasons. And I had to go see a psychiatrist, and he said, "You can't serve. You got to go back home." He said, "Here's your ticket. Go get your meal and get on the bus. We'll see you later." Mm-hmm. And so I came back home, and since I didn't have to go into the Army, I said, "Mom, I want to go to Bible college." So, and that's how Petra started, as far as I'm concerned. From my point of view, the Lord set me up for the whole thing and put me in the right place at the right time. And of course, the other three, Bob and Greg and John, had their reasons and versions of being at the same place. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I want to let you know that Greg Hogue, the other guitar player, the other lead guitar player that doesn't get much notoriety for being a founding member of Petra and the guitar player and singer and songwriter, he was the one that had the vision from the Lord to have a Christian rock band. Mm-hmm. As far as Petra goes, he had the vision. The Lord told him that we would have a Christian rock band that would go around the world and millions would be saved. And none of the rest of us had any idea what he was talking about.
Wow.
Bob wanted to do an acoustic thing, kind of a folk thing. I wanted to play Christian rock, but I didn't really care whether we were famous or not. I just wanted to play Christian rock,
Right.
And I said, well, and I believed it too. I believed we would go on. It wasn't, as far as my belief system goes, I was wholeheartedly behind it. I said, heck yeah, we can do that. Mm-hmm. Especially after getting together and jamming with them. Mm-hmm. I knew we could do it. And then getting together and rehearsing and doing all the songs that both Greg and John and Bob all brought to the table. I hadn't started writing music yet, but what the music and the material that was brought to the table and the band was just extremely exciting to be a part of starting. So I don't know if you want any questions, if you need any questions from that. But
when you started, that was like what, back in 1970 or 70s?
Fall of 72.
72. Wow.
Yeah, fall of 72.
Man. And
I would have graduated the fall of 71, but I actually got kicked out in 71 from school and went ahead and got my GED later.
Right.
But never did go back to high school.
I see.
I was so interested in playing music, and I knew what the Lord had for me that when I got the opportunity to hit the road with my uncle, I took it, even though I was greatly disappointed in my uncle. He was, a womanizer, and he was married, and so it was an eye opener to the secular rock and roll world.
Right.
And it didn't take long. Through that summer, as soon as that summer was over, I was ready to get out there. And it was a miracle how I got out of there, because I called my mom, and I told my mom, I said, Mom, I got to get into a Christian band. I can't take this stuff on the road with my uncle and this rock and roll band, secular rock and roll band. It's just not me. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, how did you know I was at the office? And I said, well, I'm just calling you at the office. It's Monday. She said, well, it's a holiday. And she said, I just happened to come into the office because I was trying to figure out how I could get a hold of you. I just talked to Doug Oldham. Doug Oldham's an old gospel singer. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No.
Did a lot of stuff with Gaither and them.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, he was at our church, and he said, there's a guy in Nashville named Gene Cotton that's looking for a drummer, and this is his last day, Saturday. If he doesn't hear from a Christian drummer by Saturday, then he's scratching the whole thing. And that was the day that I called. That was that weekend that I called my mom. I had to call him by Monday because of the holiday, right? So that's how it worked on Monday. So I had to give him a call. That was the day that I called my mom. So it was really cool how I got shifted from my uncles, and the Lord delivered me out of that situation as secular rock and roll band into a Christian rock band, which is where I wanted to be at that point in time, because I felt that's where I needed to be as far as my calling goes. I was ready to pursue my calling that I had received, like I said, back when I was 12 years old, 13 years old, whatever it was, at Bible camp, church camp.
And can I ask you, what was who was your influences? Now, growing up, as far as musical influences.
Cream. Cream was a big one. Deep Purple. Beatles. Very, very early on, of course, it was the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks. 60. I'm talking about like 62, 3, 4, 5. Those real early 60s, when I was really in my formative years musically. It would have been those bands. And then later, when I got into high school, I started to get into an American rock and roll, like CCR, Queen's Clearwater, and all that. But my real big influences and the real big reasons why I played the drums probably would have been Ringo Starr and the Beatles, of course, and then the rest of that British invasion that came over really got me hooked. The Who and the Kinks and the Stones and the Cream, all of them guys.
Yeah.
Into Zeppelin, and Zeppelin was a little bit later, but Deep Purple was in the early days. Hush and Deep Purple, and such good stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I loved also. I grew up listening to AM radio, Jim, and so the AM radio gave me everything. I was listening to country, I was listening to gospel, I was listening to soul. And so when I started playing drums, I had an interest in playing it all, and I ended up doing that. I ended up playing it all. I played a lot of good Christian rock with Petra, and then I played the blues down in Texas and up in Chicago, and I played rhythm and blues, and I played country. And of course, all along, I've been playing in church my whole life. I continue to play in church every Sunday morning. So that's just been part of my life ever since I was a teenager. I just love to play.
Well,
get behind those drums, boy. Let's praise the Lord.
Exactly. I mean, to tell you the truth, you guys, thanks to the vision of Petra, even it was such an influence on me in a way for the alternative Christian. I got into a lot of them bands as well, growing up, but it was like I needed something more than just that. And I grew up in a Christian church and everything like that. So in order for me to, I wasn't basically into the praise and worship stuff when I was younger. I wanted something just like, maybe just sounded a little bit like Zeppelin, or sounded a little bit like, some of the groups. That, And
how old are you?
I'm 51.
You're 51?
I'm 51, yes.
Yeah. So I'm 66. I'll be 66 in November. So you were, you probably exposed, which Petra incarnation were you exposed to first? The 80s Petra?
Yeah, pretty much. But see, I liked going farther back into Greg X Volts. I mean, I liked the Not of This World was a cool one, but I just got into almost all of Petra. They were like I really enjoyed them because of the style that I liked. Okay, my style was more or less the 38 special. Let's see, who else? A lot of Southern rock. I liked a lot of,
Sure.
Skinnerd and ZZ Top, and them kinds of things. Besides just Zeppelin, and
That's good.
I liked a lot of the harder stuff, but not so hard. And one of the reasons why that Petra drawed me more than a lot of the other ones was basically the lyrics, and not just that, it was the words. Because like when you listen to regular, secular music, what they're singing about, and sometimes I just like the music more than I like the words. But when you listen to
Oh yeah.
When you listen to Christian music, you want to hear the words, and it was actually a message that Petra was sending out. It wasn't just what I mean. It was a spiritual thing, from the 80s, and even way back when things got started. There was a connection. Then you guys put out the praise and worship tunes and stuff like that. No, that was awesome. It's like I said,
Yeah.
I grew up in the hymns. We sang nothing but hymns back then. I'm from the Assemblies of God, so we sang a lot of hymns. And church was actually it's getting kind of boring to me. Once you get a certain age.
Yeah, I was really lucky. I was lucky in the churches that I was in from the time I was a teenager, ready to play the drums, were pretty formative themselves in training me in how to play in different types of environments and playing. The church was where we started. Petra had a pretty big auditorium. In fact, we would bring Christian rock acts in there, and Petra would open up for like Larry Norman or whoever they brought through, because we had a big ministry called the Adam's Apple.
Okay.
And the Adam's Apple was the ministry to the young people of Fort Wayne, and got huge because of our bus ministry. This church we were involved with, and that I was a member of when we started Petra, was really a phenomenal church. They had everything going from. They had the bus ministry, so they had the Sunday school thing going on. Then they had Adam's Apple ministry, which was to the young people, which they started downtown first of all, and on the landing during the Jesus movement and the hippies and all that stuff. So that's where that's where it was really happening. A lot of people got saved then. And that's how Petra came out of that thing. Petra really came out of the Jesus movement.
Yeah.
So all of that kind of was the Lord, of course, the Lord's happening and the Lord's timing. So we just happened, and we'll tell you, all four of the guys will tell you that if it wasn't us, it would have been somebody else that the Lord used for Petra, because he was touching all kinds of rock and roll musicians. That's who, especially Greg and Bob and John. They didn't go to church. They didn't grow up in church like I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in church, and I knew what I was going to be as a youngster growing up, that I was going to be involved with Christian ministry. But Bob and Greg and John came out of rock and roll. They were all secular rock and roll. And they got saved, and then they came to Fort Wayne because they heard about the ministry at Calvary Temple, and they wanted to get hooked up into the ministry and go to Bible college and everything. So it was really good. It's really cool how the Lord put us together like that. But they had four guys from different backgrounds, and Bob and John were from Ohio, and Greg was from Hamilton, Indiana. So I was the only one that lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So they all moved there to go to Bible college, and the Lord moved them there, of course, to start Petra.
I see. Yeah, I mean,
well, you're getting a lot of good history, good early history, and of course, from my memory is pretty good along that. But most of the guys will probably agree with me on all that stuff too. Maybe Bob and Greg would have argument, but that's what they always argued. That's why the band couldn't stick together. The first band couldn't stick together because Bob and Greg but it heads too much. They both wrote music, they both sang lead, and they both played lead guitar.
Oh,
And
I
so,
see.
and they were both very, very talented. So, Bob wanted to go one direction a lot of times, and Greg wanted to go the other. So it ended up, it never, even though it did work, it was stressful a lot of times, but the Lord used it regardless. But, like on some of Greg's stuff didn't get on the records, and it was because he said because Bob never did like him writing music and singing lead, and so, there was and I could see that. I could see that they had that kind of personality problem, but that's why when the band broke up, when I left the band, I got married. We weren't making much money. We even had to borrow money to buy in our early days, we were touring. We'd go out and tour in a Plymouth Duster and a trailer with a trailer, a U-Haul trailer on the back with the equipment. All five of us, including the sound man, because it would belong to the sound man, the Plymouth Duster did. None of us had a car worthy to pull the trailer. And we would go to Texas or wherever, the East Coast or California, wherever they wanted us to play. We would travel in that thing. It had no air conditioning. So it was something else. And then we finally had enough tours and got enough money saved up that we put a down payment on a mobile home, motor home. They wanted to get a motor home, right? A motor home with a truck chassis that could pull our trailer, and we get a trailer made and all of that stuff. And so we all went to the bank and we thought we could give them. They wouldn't even accept our signatures on a thing without a cosigner. So my mom had to cosign for us to get our first motor home and trailer.
Wow.
Yeah.
There
was no money.
Yeah.
We were making really no money. And so when I got married, I had to quit the band. There was just no money to support my wife. And then next, John DeGroff got married, and so then the band just kind of busted up. And Bob said, "Well, I'm going to move to Nashville, and I'm going to try to keep the thing going. So I'm going to take the name." Everybody agreed. Go ahead, Bob. Take the name. Go to Nashville and see what you can do. And so the '80s Petra that evolved. From Nashville was because of the breakup of the original band in Fort Wayne. We were originally, our pastor was our manager, our booking agent. They were our pastors. They did, it was really a pretty cool grassroots type Jesus movement thing that Petra was. It was pretty organic. And then it became in the '80s. Then with the new Petra out of Nashville, became pretty much industrialized. Not to say that it was bad. It wasn't bad. It just became the example of what Christian rock should be, really. But they took it into the, which I was really proud of them. I'd come see him and everything. I went to see him, and because I knew Louis way before the band started. He used to play with one of my favorite artists from Nashville. You may know him, Randy Matthews.
No.
You ever heard of Randy Matthews?
Uh-uh.
Look him up. Randy Matthews Band. Oh, excellent stuff. But anyway, Louis played with them first in his band, and then when I resigned from active duty, then eventually they hooked up with Louis. They went through a lot of different drummers that never, including my cousin, that never did make the grade. But finally they hooked up with Louis, and then it took off in the '80s, and they did the whole arena rock and roll scene during the '80s, during the heyday. And we had Kansas gave us their stage and their lighting and everything.
Yeah, they were with the Elefantes for a while. I mean, remember that they even did some stereo work for them. They recorded a couple albums with the Elefantes from Kansas, and that was cool. That was cool.
So the '80s really were a whole different band. It's a whole different thing. It's a whole different Petra.
Yeah, it was.
So it was. And I don't really know a whole lot about it except for just what Bob would tell me when I'd go out and see him, because I'd hang out with him and he'd come over when he was like wherever I was living at the time. Like when I was in Dallas, he'd come over to the apartment and do his laundry, and we'd talk how things were going. And
wow.
And he told, he would tell me that his son was having nightmares. And I said, well, why don't you just get off the road for a while, man? You don't have to be out here. Put some other guitar player in there. You can't, we all lost wives and everything doing that kind of crap.
Yeah.
So he went home, and he did. He got off the road, and his son straightened up and stopped having nightmares. It turned out really great. And then Bob got back involved with it later, when it was good again. So, Bob's real good friends. I'm real good friends with all of them. I'm probably the only guy in the whole Petra conglomerate of musicians that's friends with everybody.
That's good. You still keep in touch with them.
I got everybody's phone numbers.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's been able to get them back together for reunions and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Although I don't think we'll get them. I don't think we'll do it any longer because we're too far apart and we're too busy.
Yeah. It would.
Bob just had their hip replacement.
Oh yeah. There's stuff that normal people like me or whatever, we don't know a whole lot about stuff that's going on. As far as personal things, sometimes we do, sometimes I don't. This is my hobby. I love doing this, and I really, and to tell you the truth, I mean, I want, it wasn't like I said, for a lot of Christian music, I don't know, I don't know where I'd be in my faith. I really enjoyed that I was able to not just have to listen to all that stuff that was going on back then, where I could have an alternative and listening to good music like your music. I listened to, Mylon Lefevre. He was, them guys are, good. I used to listen to Whiteheart a lot as well. I mean, they were like three of my bands. Plus, I like DeGarmo and Key as well. They were like,
yeah. Did you ever get in the 77?
What's that? Yeah.
Mike Rowe in the 77. They were my favorite. When Petra was big time in the 80s, it was the 77s that I was listening to.
Oh, the 77s? Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I loved them.
Yeah.
I loved them. I liked it. See, I didn't like the sound of Petra during the 80s because their drum sound, they weren't letting Louis play on albums. Oh. And yeah, it was just when I went to hear him, let's see, where was it? In Nashville or something. I went to see him one time. I took the youth group, Arkansas. I took the group to Hot Springs to see him, the youth group. And I had a coffee house down there. And I talked to Louis, and he said, I said, hey, man, your drum sound is kind of lame on these albums right now. What's the deal? And he says, it's not me, Bill. He said, they won't let me play. The producers won't let me record. And I said, oh my God, this is really something. So that's what happened when you go to Nashville.
Wow.
That's what happens when people go to Nashville. It's just really heartbreaking sometimes.
Yeah.
So I said, really, I didn't know that. And so they didn't let him start playing on albums till the late 80s.
Wow.
And I don't know if it's actually whether all of the albums are actually whether the credits are exactly right or not, but it was really discouraging to me for that. I said, I'm glad I didn't go to Nashville, try to make it in this, because they got a bunch of Nashville cats that are perfect players, played in the studios for years. And then you get, somebody like me or Louis coming off the street musicians and playing probably self-taught. I know I am. I didn't have any formal training. So I'm just glad I wasn't involved with it then. I'm really glad that the Lord put me in there when he put me in there. The 70s Petra was a lot of fun. And I've got a whole lot of more stories I could tell you, but I've got to get off. My wife's home, and this is our time together. She just got off work.
I got you. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for being a part of Petra. You know, Eva, I wanted to tell you that, even when we had our kids and stuff, they were exposed to Petra even in the womb. You know what I'm saying? Both
Good.
my youngest kid, my youngest is so funny. That's why I wanted him to come on and talk to you for a few. But he likes the stuff like we kind of like. You know what I mean? The older style stuff for some reason. He plays
Good.
he plays guitar. He'll probably start taking lessons again, but he likes that.
He's got good taste. Well, we can do this again. We don't have to make this our only time. There's lots of stuff that stories from the early days of Petra that I could tell you, playing with Larry Norman and Bill Cagey and all them guys. Love songs.
Yeah, Larry.
We were able to be a part of that. There's just lots of cool stuff. So we can do it some other time. But I'll have to let you know. I'll have to let you go for now, Jim.
Okay, Bill. Well, thank you so much.
Lord bless you, my brother.
Bless you and thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you, and you have a great day as well. Thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate you coming on, and
no problem.
Thank you, Bill. That was Bill Glover. He played with Petra, the rock band. He was one of the founders of Petra, and if you enjoy Christian music, look up Petra. They have a lot of good messages in their music, and that was one of the reasons why I enjoy Petra. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for watching our program tonight, and please subscribe to the Jim Sechrist All Over podcast. And like I said, we'll have some more interesting people come on. I don't always have actors or and stuff. Sometimes I like to talk to Christians as well. I talk to everyone. It doesn't matter who they are. But like I said, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you again, Bill, for just being a blessing today and talking to us about Petra and how Christian music started way back in the day with the Jesus music. I'm sure we will probably have Bill come on sometime again, talk about Jesus music and how that got started in the Jesus festivals that they had. It was a fun time back there in the 70s and 60s in a way where between the secular stuff, which was Woodstock and all, and there's also the Christian music. There was also the Godfathers, the Larry Newman, as he talked about. Larry Newman was one of the godfathers of Christian music as far as the Christian rock music. Now today we have Christian rock music, we have Christian popular music, we have Christian metal music, we have all of them things, but they still are the influences that they gave them for today. So thank you guys so much. Please subscribe, tell your friends. I'm going to have some more actors on in a couple of weeks also, and like I said, just keep tuned to keep tuned to this podcast. Thank you guys so much for being a part of it, and we will talk to you later.